Scroll and the Serpent. Setting: Tehran, Ava's apartment, later that night. POV: Ava Nazari. Ava stared at the coin long after the stranger had gone. The bull, the dagger, the serpent, their crude forms gleamed dully in her palm. She turned it over, running her thumb across the worn edges as if the answer might surface with enough pressure. The cafe's quiet hum drifted around her, but her mind had already slipped away. First flashback: graduate school. Doctoral studies, PhD, in Harvard University. A classroom, the radiator clanging in protest against the winter chill. Mithras wasn't originally Roman, Ava said, tapping her pen against a photocopied sheet. In the Vedas, Mitra is a solar deity, a guardian of contracts, an upholder of cosmic truth. In ancient Persia, Mithra was the protector of covenants and friendship. No mention of bulls, no sacrifice. That came later, distorted. Professor Calderon smirked behind his wire-rimmed glasses. So the Romans twisted him into something their legions could understand. Maybe, Ava answered carefully. Or maybe they inherited only a fragment, a broken myth, stripped of its meaning. A few students exchanged bored glances, but Ava had felt something stir deep inside her even then, a connection she couldn't explain, a feeling that the symbols spoke directly to her across the abyss of centuries. Second flashback: ancient memory. The seminar room melted away. Now there was only fire and stone, a hidden temple carved into a cliff face, walls heavy with painted symbols and the scent of sacred oils. Someone knelt before an altar. A woman. Not Ava, but bound to her. She wore flowing robes stitched with gold, and a mark blazed red upon her brow, the sun embraced by the crescent moon. In her hands, a dagger, ancient and ritual-worn. The worshippers around her chanted. Mithra of the Covenant, Lord of the Bridge, Upholder of Stars. Before her, an altar relief showed the familiar scene, a bull pierced by a dagger, a serpent drinking its blood. The woman's hands trembled. She questioned the rite even as she prepared to perform it. Why must the life-bringer die? Her heart cried out. Beneath the ritual, there was a deeper oath, the binding. The woman pressed a coin, this coin, onto the altar, sealing a vow that would echo forward beyond death, beyond memory. When the serpent returns and the dagger thirsts anew, we shall awaken. Third flashback: near the present. Ava gasped aloud, jerking upright. Her vision blurred, the cafe walls wavered. And then, without willing it, her lips moved. Soft and musical, foreign to her own ears. Mithra Yazata, Vthraksha, Aharata. Words in an ancient tongue, flowing from her like water, like a prayer recalled from a dream. A clatter startled her. The young woman at the cashier's counter stared, frozen halfway through wiping a glass. Ava shook her head to clear the fog and rose shakily, digging into her purse for cash. She approached the counter, heart hammering against her ribs. The cashier, a girl maybe in her 20s with bright eyes and dyed auburn hair, gawked openly at her. "Miss, who were you talking to?" she asked in hesitant Farsi. Or do you always talk to yourself like that?" Ava blinked. "I wasn't talking to myself. I was with someone. A man. He gave me." She opened her palm, showing the coin. The cashier leaned back warily, drying her hands on a towel. "Miss, I don't know what you saw. But there was no man. You were just sitting there. Not moving. Like a statue. Staring at the wall with your eyes wide open. Then you spoke. In? I don't know. Some ancient language." The word struck Ava like a slap. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. The cashier glanced nervously at the coin but made no move to touch it. "You just sat there. Silent for maybe 10 minutes. Then suddenly, those words. Like a chant." Ava forced a smile that felt like it might crack her face. She fumbled the money onto the counter, mumbling, "Sorry. Long day. I must be tired." The cashier gave a polite but clearly uneasy nod, eyes lingering warily on her as Ava hurried toward the door. The night air hit her like a slap. Tehran streets shimmered under yellow lamps, distorted by heat and dust. As she made her way back to her apartment, the coin pressed tight in her hand, one thought circled her mind like a vulture. Am I losing my mind? Or is something waking up inside me? The bull. The dagger. The serpent. They were no longer just symbols in a book. They were hers, and they were calling. The moment she touched it, the air in her apartment grew heavy, like gravity had changed. The lights dimmed. Her pulse surged. Ava's apartment was small, a third-floor walk-up tucked behind a crumbling courtyard, but it had always felt safe, hers. Tonight, as she unlocked the door and stepped inside, a chill crept over her skin. The lights were off, but a faint glow outlined the edges of her mirror across the room. Cautiously, she crossed the floor. There, drawn in a thin dusting of ash or powder, was a symbol on the mirror's surface, the bull, the dagger, and above them, 7 stars forming a curve. She gasped and staggered back. The scent of ancient incense, dry, spicy, resinous, clung to the air, though she had lit nothing. For a wild moment she thought about calling someone, anyone. But who could she call? Who would believe her? Her hand clutched the coin until it bit into her palm. And then, the revelation came, not as words, but as a certainty blooming in her chest. Mithras had slain the bull not out of hatred, but as a cosmic act of release. The bull was life itself, the pulse of earth and sky. In slaying it, Mithras did not destroy, he unbound. From the wound, plants, animals, the turning seasons were born. It was not murder, it was metamorphosis. And the stars above, they were not random. They were the Pleiades. The celestial mark of the bull. The symbol of an age coming to an end. Another vision, far in the past. The apartment dissolved into mist. Ava saw another time, another place. A desert plateau under a darkening sky, a crowd gathered around a stone altar. Cloaked figures in white and red, their faces solemn as they gazed up. The stars were brighter than Ava had ever seen, no city lights to mute them. In the heavens, a massive bull-shaped constellation loomed, its eye a blood-red star, Aldebaran. A priestess stepped forward, a young woman with braided hair and the same crescent and sun mark Ava had glimpsed in her earlier vision. She raised her arms and cried out. The age of the bull ends. The gate closes. The new covenant must be forged in blood and fire, or all will fall into chaos. The congregation moaned low in their throats, a song of grief. Above them, the constellation of Taurus slowly dipped toward the western horizon, sinking. The priestess turned toward a stone relief at the altar's base, the image of a man, a god, a figure with a dagger poised above a bull. Ava understood then, the ritual had cosmic meaning. It marked the end of an epoch, the fading of the age of Taurus and the birth of a new celestial order. The slaying of the bull was a symbol, the sacrifice of the old world to seed the new. And Mithras, the slayer, was not a villain, he was a midwife of time. Back to the present. Ava gasped and stumbled, grabbing the edge of a chair to steady herself. The mirror's ghostly symbol still gleamed in the dimness, as if etched by invisible hands. The coin burned hot against her skin. The truth pulsed within her, terrifying and undeniable. The bull had to die for the stars to be reborn. And she, somehow, was tied to that ancient covenant. A guardian. A witness. Perhaps even a harbinger. She turned to her laptop. The dreams, the visions, the voices, what if they weren't just stress or obsession? What if they were a call? Ava was still standing frozen in her darkened apartment when the sound came, the faintest rustle, like paper sliding across stone. She turned toward the door. There, lying just inside the threshold, was a large, battered manila envelope. No sound of retreating footsteps. No knock. Just the heavy, expectant silence. Hands trembling, Ava picked it up. It was unmarked, no address, no name. Only the faint smudge of graphite on one corner, as if handled by dusty fingers. Don't even think of fingerprints since it was all smudges. Inside, a single, heavy sheet of folded parchment. Carefully, she unfolded it across her kitchen table. The rubbing? It was a rubbing. Someone had taken pencil or graphite to capture the relief of an ancient stone carving. The image was rough but unmistakably clear. At the center stood a man, tall and commanding. He wore the high, crested cap of a magi, Phrygian caps, flowing robes carved with intricate folds. But it was the detail on his chest that chilled Ava to the core. An embossed skull and crossbones, ancient but unmistakable, stitched directly over his heart. Below him was a great wheel, like a chariot wheel or the wheel of time itself, its spokes forming strange, broken patterns. Above the figure's head were two separate clusters of stars, each carefully drawn with individual points. Ava leaned closer, squinting at the smudged graphite. The cluster on the right showed Alpha Centauri, the three bright stars in tight formation, with the familiar hook of the Southern Cross nearby. The cluster on the left was different, dominated by Vega, brilliant and lonely, but surrounded by constellations arranged in unnatural quadrants. And above each star cluster, in both, the Big Dipper had been copied, but shifted. In one, it pointed eastward, bent sharply as if fleeing. In the other, it folded downward, embracing a different star altogether. Ava's heart pounded harder. It wasn't random. These weren't maps of the stars as they were today. This was a star chart for a different sky. One that is 15,000 years from now, when the Earth's slow tilt would shift the heavens themselves. But Ava does not know that, not just yet. It was just confusing. Is this an error? Is this like an alien world? So many questions than answers. The implication. Whoever had made this rubbing, whoever had sent it to her, was showing her that the myth of the bull, the dagger, the serpent, the entire story of Mithras, was not merely about ancient empires. It was a stellar prophecy. A cosmic clock, measuring the dying and rebirth of entire worlds. Mithras, or whoever this magus had been, had carried that knowledge. The bull was not only Earth's life but the stellar ages themselves. The slaying of the bull was the slaying of epochs, the gate from one great era to the next. Ava's fingers brushed the edge of the parchment, feeling the weight of it. This was a message. A warning. And the stars themselves were moving again. The heavens, rearranging themselves for a new age. Ava folded the parchment carefully, a shiver tracing her spine. She didn't know how she knew it, but the next time she looked at the night sky, something would be different. Somehow, she was no longer just a scholar studying forgotten myths. She was standing at the threshold of the new covenant. And the stars were calling her name. Ava sat back heavily into the kitchen chair, the old wooden frame creaking under her. The rubbing lay open before her, its graphite shadow seeming to pulse in the dim light. Her eyes were drawn again to the skull and crossbones embroidered on the figure's chest. It wasn't random. Instinctively, she pulled out a small compass from her bag, a leftover from fieldwork years ago. She placed it beside the parchment and gasped. The crossbones were aligned almost perfectly to true north, with the skull sitting directly atop it, like a marker. Ava whispered to herself, why north? Why perfectly aligned? The realization crept over her. The magus in the relief was not just a priest, he was a marker himself. A human compass. A symbol pointing to the North Star, Polaris now, but in the deeper past and future, Vega and Alpha Centauri would each, at different ages, take the throne of the northern sky. The wheel beneath him took on a new, terrible significance. Ava traced its rough edges with her finger. The wheel wasn't a chariot, nor a mere symbol of fate, it was the wheel of the heavens themselves. Precession. The slow, grinding tilt of the Earth's axis, causing the pole star to shift over tens of thousands of years. The heavens were not fixed. They turned. The bull, the dagger, the serpent, even the Pleiades, they were signposts along a far vaster cycle. Ava's breathing quickened. This wasn't myth. It was ancient, astronomical knowledge encoded into religion. Her hand brushed the edges of the parchment, feeling a faint roughness there she hadn't noticed before. She lifted the paper closer to the light. On the very borders of the rubbing, half hidden in the graphite shading, were faint, repeating symbols, swastikas. Not the hateful corruption that history later knew. These were ancient, pure, solar crosses, wheels turning, a symbol of endless rotation and movement. They turned clockwise, rhythmically, like the wheels of a great celestial machine. Each tiny swastika seemed almost to advance around the border of the parchment, as if telling a story of rotation, orbit, precession. Ava's mind reeled. The swastika wasn't just a symbol of the sun. It was a narrative, the reminder that everything turned, the stars, the pole of the heavens, the very soul of the world. The relief wasn't merely a religious artifact. It was a map, a prophecy, and a cosmic clock, hidden in plain sight for those who could still read the old language of stars and stone. Ava's thoughts, building tension. If the crossbones align to the pole, if the wheel measures the heavens, if the stars are changing again. Her thoughts tangled into a single horrifying conclusion. Then the time of the bull's death, and the rebirth of the stars, is coming again. And she, for reasons she could not yet understand, was being called to witness it. She opened the encrypted folder she'd never shared with anyone, filled with photographs from the Zagros site. Symbols etched in stone, aligned perfectly to solstice stars. One carving in particular, a sunburst surrounding a man piercing a bull, beneath 7 stars. She enlarged it. The same 7 stars hovered above the bull as on the coin. She didn't sleep. By dawn, she had connected the Mithraic iconography to ancient Hebrew angelology, Quranic references to the people of the cave, and the lost gospel fragments smuggled out of northern Syria. Every faith had a story about a pact made in darkness, sealed with blood, and guarded by light. Not allegory. Memory. At noon, she received an email from an anonymous sender. No subject line. Just a photograph. A stone scroll, split in 3 pieces, each with cuneiform writing and blood-red stains. The message beneath. Come to London. The flame endures beneath St. Cyprian's. We're not the only ones looking for you. Her hand trembled. She looked again at the coin. It wasn't just an artifact. It was a key. And it was waking something inside her. Blood of the Bull. London, abandoned church of St. Cyprian. The wind off the Thames cut like glass as Ava stepped out of the black cab, her coat too thin for the hour. The city pulsed around her with the rhythm of a world pretending to be ordinary. But her destination was not. St. Cyprian's had been boarded up since the Blitz, its stones blackened by time and fire. Ivy strangled its broken bell tower. No one looked at it. No one approached it. And yet, the moment Ava saw it, something inside her shifted, like a tuning fork struck in the marrow of her bones. The iron gate creaked open without resistance. Inside, it was colder than the street. Dust danced in columns of pale moonlight pouring through fractured stained glass. Symbols glowed faintly along the shattered altar, 7 stars, a coiled serpent, a man standing over a bull. She descended the narrow stairwell behind the pulpit, guided by instinct more than knowledge. The walls were lined with bones. Not human. Too long. Too old. At the base, she found a door of heavy stone etched with a familiar sigil. The coin in her pocket vibrated against her hip. She pressed it to the door. It opened. The chamber beyond pulsed with firelight. Torches ringed the room, illuminating figures in crimson robes. Their faces were bare. No masks. Just eyes that looked at her like a long-lost prophecy had walked in wearing flesh and hesitation. One stepped forward. A woman, elderly but upright, eyes bright with dangerous clarity. "Dr. Ava Nazari," she said, with the cadence of a ritual. "Welcome home." Ava's throat tightened. "I'm not one of you." The woman smiled, not unkindly. "Child, you are what we are. The last of the flame-born." A murmur rippled through the chamber. "The bloodline of the Magavan flows through you. Hidden for centuries. Lost to time. Until now." Ava backed away. "I'm a scholar. An archaeologist. I don't believe in." The flames behind the altar flared blue. "You don't have to believe in fire for it to burn," said the woman. Another robed figure approached, cradling a stone scroll, one of the pieces from the photo she'd received. It shimmered as though it had been written not just in ink, but in memory. The woman placed her hand on it. "This is the first covenant," she said. "Not written by man, but given to him. Before the gods fell. Before the names were scattered." Ava's voice cracked. "What does it say?" The woman looked at her. Through her. "It says the bull will bleed again. That from its blood, the world will be made new. And that only the flameborn can call the god back into flesh." Behind her, the flames coalesced into a shape. A bull. A sun. A dagger suspended in light. Ava felt something shift inside her. A heat. A pressure. A memory not her own. And then, a voice. Low. Ageless. "You bear my mark. You are my altar. My vessel. My flame." The fire went out. Darkness rushed in. Ava collapsed. The Covenant wakes. London, St. Cyprian's inner sanctum. She came to in a circle of whispering voices. Ava lay on a bed of warm stone wrapped in a cloak of crimson wool. Above her, the chamber's ceiling glowed with symbols, celestial alignments, beasts locked in eternal struggle, the seven-point flame. She sat up too quickly. Her breath caught. The air felt heavier. Alive. "You dreamed," the old woman said beside her, sitting calmly, as if she'd been waiting for hours. "They all do. When the flame first touches the soul." Ava looked at her. "I heard his voice." "Yes. You heard Mithra." She wanted to laugh. Cry. Scream. But none of it came. Just a memory of the voice, a voice that wasn't sound, but force. It hadn't spoken to her. It had written itself into her. "I felt something inside me break," she whispered. The woman nodded. "No. Not break. Open." She handed Ava a mirror, ancient bronze, polished to a smoky sheen. Ava looked into it. Her eyes. The irises shimmered, just for a second, like they held a fire behind them. "You carry the memory of the covenant now," the woman said. "It is not metaphor. It is not myth. Mithra was the first pact. The force that bound order from chaos. And now he returns, not as a messiah, but as a reckoning." "Why me?" "You are not the first flameborn," the woman said softly. "But you are the last." Before Ava could respond, the ground trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. The cultists froze. One of them turned toward the far tunnel. "Something approaches," he said. "Not of the flame." Ava stood, still dizzy, heart pounding. Outside, above the city, a blackout swept through central London. Phones died. Screens went static. Somewhere deep beneath Westminster Abbey, a sealed vault cracked open for the first time in 700 years. And far across the sea, in Jerusalem, a cardinal woke from a nightmare of blood and stars, and immediately called the Council of the Second Veil. Scene cut, Vatican City, Subterranean Archive. Beneath the catacombs, inside a vault known only to 5 living souls, a priest read the report with trembling hands. Subject Nazari activated. First fire confirmed. Coin resonance logged. The man crossed himself, then opened a locked drawer and removed a thin, lead-bound volume. Its cover bore only a single symbol, a lion-headed figure holding a dagger and keys. He placed it on the table. The testament of the Tauroctony, he whispered. God help us all.